Just a quick parenthetical note. Thank you to every single one of you for being here. Okay. Consider my voice as I speak to you right now. You are hearing two elocutions simultaneously, my words and my accent. You're probably already trying to locate my accent. Where is she from, you ask? The concept of accent I am introducing has made you aware of the process of communication in which we are now inscribed, marking me as a foreigner. For me, the accent is unavoidable, but for you, it is equally unavoidable, because actually my accent exists in your ears. The inescapable accent co-implicates us, foregrounding the context. Here now, you and me, we are both performing my own accent. Expanding from these considerations, in this presentation, I will argue how the accent can also be found in the visual arts. This proposition allows reconsidering the co-implicated role of the artist, the viewer, and the context of enunciation in the very construction and display of the accented artwork. This visual accent I am proposing shifts from linguistics into visuality, a fundamental move that turns the accent itself into a foreigner, a migrating stranger. I will look at the work of artist Rivan Neuenschwander through this framework. Watch and listen to how the accent is operating in her 2010 video, Sunday.
0-0 a Alemanha pressionando o Brasil, Ramelow de posse da bola. Brinques para Bert Schneider. Daí para Jeremias. Close aparece para receber pela meia direita. Caminha pela grande área brasileira. Schneider, Hamann, bote a Close e Neuville. Capu na recuperação para o Brasil. Toca na bola para Lúcio. Lúcio Arroque Júnior. Empurra pelo meio de campo para Gilberto Silva. Desarmado por Pringues. Pringues mete a bola para Metzelder. Daí para Hamann. Close já na grande área brasileira. Tenta invadir com Neuville. Neuville para Close Neuville. Daí para Bode a Hamann. Vai bater para o gol. Neuville bateu para o gol. Close Neuville. Daí a defesa brasileira safa-se bem mais uma vez. Roberto Carlos sai para o jogo. Roberto Akreber.
This is the beginning of Sunday, a snippet of a specific Brazil in quotation marks. You can hear and you can see this Brazil. In this video, the accent is used strategically, where Neuenschwander is empowered to embrace, perform, and critique it. Stereotypical and expected elements, such as the parrot and the football match, coexist with unexpected actions, such as the parrot eating seeds inscribed with punctuation marks and symbols. All of these elements create an explicit materialization of accentedness that should be considered for this artist's production. Rivan Neuenschwander is a Brazilian artist who has developed an international career. Having studied first in Belo Horizonte in Brazil and then in London in the 1990s, today she lives between the two cities. Contemporary, prolific, and rising, she has exhibited in major cities and major museums in the centers of the art world. She is represented by galleries in Sao Paulo, London, and New York. Neuenschwander is decidedly global. Yet, when we look at a piece like Sunday, amongst all of her internationality, we see her Brazilianness being explicitly foregrounded. I argue that, conscious of this inescapable accent, Neuenschwander tactically approaches the matter, owning what could otherwise be essentializing. In Sunday, the viewer has the impression of having stumbled upon a quotidian situation, just a given Sunday, the slow day of rest and leisure. The space is not remarkable. A radio sits on a shelf at the back of the room, and a few homely elements are distributed in the space. A potted plant sits next to the radio, while a red broom rests in the corner. In the foreground is a green Amazon parrot perched on a branch in an open cage. The radio inundates the scene with a narration of a football match, while the parrot simply eats. Suddenly, a close-up to the parrot's beak breaks the sense of the quotidian familiarity. These are not just any seeds. They have been inscribed with punctuation marks and symbols. This unexpected detail in such an expected environment suddenly disorients the viewer. When one might have thought that the parrot was operating as a ventriloquist, now it becomes clear that the voice is not coming from the parrot. The entire mood of the situation has changed, as a parrot enjoys the feast of commas, question marks, and punctuation. Throughout the entire video, the parrot continues to eat, slowly affecting the narrator's words, mixing and confusing them until they become an incomprehensible, unpunctuated gibberish. So all the elements in Sunday are discreetly interacting, but in this heavily stereotypical setting, the elements are not only in conversation with one another, but also with a history and context that exists beyond the limits of the video. The fact that this scene reads as Brazilian is because the artist is pulling from a number of social references, strategically positioning her enunciation in the context of the experience of the viewer. A stereotype as a form of imposed accent is decidedly implicating both artist and viewer, asking for context to be reconsidered. In Sunday, the central stereotypical elements that read as Brazilian are the parrot and the football match. On the one hand, the parrot reads as Brazilian because it is actually native to the region, and also visually, because its vivid blues, yellows, and greens echo the colors of the Brazilian flag. But the fact that the parrot is heavily accented also depends on visual historical constructions. We see the parrot, but we also see Zé Carioca, Walt Disney's character. This was a character created in the 1940s as part of the Good Neighbor policy implemented by Nelson Rockefeller that attempted to explain South American culture to a United States audience. The character became extremely famous in Brazil with a comic strip version that runs to this day. In her work, Neuenswander has directly referenced the character before, using it as a symbol of how an image of a playful, funny, and rogue character was imposed onto Brazilian culture by a foreign force, and most importantly, how it stuck. But Neuenswander's parrot is not performing the expected role. Parrots are defined by their capacity to mimic human speech. Usually, parrots operate as mirroring characters, bouncing back the sounds that they have been trained to replicate, receiving treats in compensation. Yet Sunday's character is not such a parrot. In a sense, this parrot is misbehaving. It's eating all the treats in the cage. The overflow of treats in turn creates a complete absence of speech. The artist has broken the expectation. The parrot will not perform for the audience, but indulge in the meticulous and repetitive act of piercing through the inscribed seeds, dropping them, and swallowing the flesh. The amount of seeds the parrot eats goes beyond reward and nourishment into excess and gluttony. The second Brazilian stereotype Neuenswander overtly references is football. The rhythm and tone of the male voice, in conjunction with the sound of a cheering crowd, allow the viewer to construct an image of a football match, such as this one. While the black and white seeds against the parrot's feathers are reminiscent of the ball rolling on the green grass. The bodies of the players are decidedly absent, but their presence has been conjured. Strategically, at this point, a viewer that shares the codes of the Portuguese language will be able to understand the details of the match. This is where a break occurs, dividing the accented and the unaccented viewers, where languages become a barrier of comprehension for the second one. While certain viewers will only get a sense of a football match, the Brazilian Portuguese-speaking viewer will recognize its specificity. This is just not any match, but the 2002 World Cup final. The emblematic match is a symbolic moment that clearly the artist selected with detail. In this match, Brazil beat Germany, ratifying its superiority in the sport as the world's longtime champion. The voice is not narrating just any game, but an instance of Brazilian splendor. The sociologist Roberto da Mata has analyzed soccer in relation to Brazilian identity. For the author, in Brazilian soccer, in order to triumph, a football player, like a samba dancer, must have jogo de cintura, the capacity to use the body to provoke confusion and fascination in the public and in their adversaries. Brazilian football has been defined by a distinct playful, creative, and responsive style that would succeed by bewildering the opponent. Brazilian football players offer their spontaneous, flexible, resourceful bodies always in motion. Football goes beyond the field. As sociologists understand, it is a performance of culture. In Sunday, Neuenswander is performing a conceptual jogo de cintura, display of the hips that is a tactical performance of culture. Her movements are at the same time like dancing samba, dribbling a ball, but also repositioning herself against an essentializing adversary and breaking through. In her video, every action is strategic. Neuenswander has created a moment of viewership where the audience becomes aware of their own sense of individual belonging or not belonging to the context. What is the audience's accent? The viewers become aware of their standing in relation to the work. By implicating the audience to this degree, the artist has made evident that viewing itself is also an act of participation because viewing is performative. In Sunday, Neuenswander is denying the human body, replacing it with the voice of a narrator and the parrot that refuses to speak. Other elements hint towards a body that has recently left the space, the broom resting in the corner, the radio playing, the careful inscription on the seeds, become tangible echoes of the artist's hand, editing, staging, constructing, directing, cutting. The fact that the game was played 8 years prior to the making of the video is another evidence of the construction of the image. Sunday insists on its being a delicate, constructed gesture. Neuenswander marshals a series of subtle rhetorical maneuvers from the artist to the viewer, eventually turning the stereotypes around and conveying a critical message. By pointing at the mechanisms in which images are constructed and culture is performed, Neuenswander is offering accented viewers a possibility of dislocation from within. She will be the expected Brazilian artist, she will give us the playful part and the football game, but in doing so, she will propose that even the smallest of details are a space where the viewer is implicated and where culture, history, and power reside. In Sunday, Neuenswander is offering a way to navigate these suffocating structures skillfully and pleasingly, proposing at the same time both a bewildering sequence of stereotypical images for one viewer and a liberating strategy of response for another. Neuenswander brings the unexpected inside the familiar, demonstrating that powerful critical rupture has to come from within. Thank you.